Hear more from local author Gregory Allison about the missing mystery clock in the Bausch Auditorium in just 5 minutes. Hope to see you there.
To hear about this mystery. So this is a real life mystery, a story I'm going to tell you today. It takes about 15 or 20 minutes for the whole story to come out. So it's a local story, it has some local roots, and it's all about a clock that my grandpa made that is a mystery clock. And that's a picture of it. So I'll tell you the story. In order to tell this story, we have to travel through time. So we're going to do a little bit of time travel today, if you will work with me. In the 1970s, when I was a kid, I loved mysteries. I read all the Hardy Boy books and all the Nancy Drew books and all of the investigative books, because I thought mysteries were the most fun thing in the world. Has anybody here read Hardy Boys or Nancy Drew books? Okay, and then when I was 15, I uncovered an actual mystery right within my own family that I did not know about before that. One night, my dad sat me down at the kitchen table in the evening time. He was having a drink, so I kind of loosened his tongue a little bit. And he shared the story about his dad, my grandfather, who died before I was born, but who had been an incredible inventor and clockmaker. And he had invented a collection of 13 clocks that he called the Allison Clock Collection. And this was back in the 1930s and 1940s. One of the clocks he gave as a gift to my mom and dad. That's this guy here. It's only 7 inches tall. As a wedding gift to my mom and dad. But other than that, none of his clocks were for sale. They were only on display in his watch shop. More on that later. The most incredible thing that my dad told me that night was about my grandpa's mystery clock, because nobody could tell how it worked. It didn't have any gears, it didn't have any plug or anything like that. And the hands were very special. You could take them and spin them, and they would spin around and around separately in any direction, and then they would always return to the correct time. And it was quite a thing in 1930s and 1940s in his watch shop in Los Angeles to have such a unique clock. So that was the story that my dad told me. And in my journal that night, I wrote down that I wanted to solve the mystery of how that Allison clock ran, the mystery clock. 2 mysteries actually. So how did that Allison mystery clock work? That again is a picture of it. And then the second mystery was, what happened to the rest of the clocks? Because my dad didn't know. We lived here in Rochester, and his dad died in 1955 in Los Angeles. And he never knew what happened to the clocks. He did tell me that he thought they were going to go to a museum. That's what my grandpa wanted to happen, but nobody knew. So I made a vow when I was 15 years old that when I grew up, I was going to figure out that mystery clock and find the rest of the missing clocks. Even though I did inherit one, that one right there, the one that was my parents' wedding gift. I got to keep that, so I inherited that. All right, we're going to take a trip through time. So I want you to all close your eyes for a moment and imagine you are in the year 1325. There's no electricity, there's no indoor plumbing, there's no light bulbs, and there's no clocks. So when that happens, how do you tell what time it is? Any guesses? How would you tell if you were in 1325 and you needed to know what time? Yes? By looking at the sun's rotation is a good answer. You could say to your friend, I'll meet you at sunup for breakfast. And then you guys can find the time to meet. Any other ideas of how people told time back then? Often they would ring church bells. They would have the person who owned the church would watch the sun and know when it was straight ahead for noon, and they would ring the bell so that all the people in the town would know, oh, it's noon time, we can eat lunch now. Or maybe they would make a meeting to go meet at the local cafe at lunchtime. The last thing that I thought of that people did back then was they paid attention to the stars, and they would map by the stars and could tell what time it was based on the rotation of the planets, all right? But that doesn't help very much when you need to meet somebody at 10 o'clock in the morning and the the sun's already out and there's no watch. So let's take a little more. We're going to go back in the time machine for a minute. Everybody, I'll ask you to close your eyes. And I want you to imagine that you are in the year 1759. In this year, England rules most of the world with their vast shipping fleet. Benjamin Franklin just discovered electricity 7 years ago. And this was 17 years ago. The United States wasn't even born yet. But at this time, John Harrison was an English carpenter. He was a guy who lived in England. And the government of England was having a problem. They had a mystery to solve. The problem was when they rowed their ships out into the world, or out onto the seas, they couldn't tell what longitude and latitude they were at. So they would often run into stuff like, oh, I ran into the cliffs of Dover, or oh, I ran into the Rock of Gibraltar. And the ship would go down and everybody would die, and all of the goods that were on the ships would be lost. So they needed to figure out, how can we figure out a map so that when we're out on a ship in the middle of the sea, we can tell what time it is, or we can tell where we are. And they figured out if we could only know what time it was on the ship, then we could be able to figure out where we were on the ocean. We would stop running into rocks and things. Unfortunately, the only clocks that existed at that time were pendulum clocks, where you know, like a big grandfather clock where the pendulum swings back and forth and that keeps the time going. Well, those are great at home, but they're really lousy on a ship. How many people here have been on a boat or a ship? Definitely. Yeah, they're very wavy and rocky and you want to throw up. So the pendulum clock is not going to keep accurate time. So the British government made a prize and a contest to solve the mystery. If anybody could figure out a way to tell time on a ship that would be accurate, they would earn a prize of around 15,000 pounds, I believe it was. It's worth $5 million in today's money. So it was like the lottery. It was a big deal. All right? So John Harrison, he was just a carpenter. He didn't have anything to do with timekeeping, but he was a smart inventor. And he worked and worked and worked over a period of 30 years. And he made 4 different timepieces. And eventually he made what we know as the modern pocket watch. This guy right here. That's an actual picture of the watch that he made in 1759. And that is still the model that works today for watches that you wear on your wrist. And he did finally get the prize money, although they fought him for about 20 years about it, but that's a whole other story. So think about what's inside a watch. I know we tell time these days mostly by looking at our cell phone or looking at the clock and the display on the dashboard of your car, something like that. But when I was growing up, people wore a watch on their wrist, so you know what time it was. So you could go to class, so you could meet somebody for a cup of coffee. So what did John Harrison figure out that he could put inside his watch that would keep the correct time, even on the bumpy seas? Think of it like the gears of a bike. You have something that motors the gear, and it turns other things, and it moves you forward, or creates constant speed. It's very similar in concept to a watch or a clock. You have a watch, and there's a bunch of gears inside there, and they're all designed to rotate at a very certain time interval so that you can tell, it makes the hands go around and you can tell, oh, it's noon, it's 1 o'clock, it's 5 minutes after 4. All right, we're going to go back in the time machine for a second. Everybody close your eyes. We're going to travel to the year 1830. The first steam locomotive just ran between Manchester and Liverpool in England. And pendulum clocks were more common, but mostly only rich people owned them. It just wasn't a thing that anybody had access to. But everybody knew how they worked. John Harrison's prize had been published, and everybody went to the museum to see his watch and everything like that. So they knew how clocks worked. Enter 1830, and a guy named Robert Hood. He was not just a watchmaker, but he was also a bit of an amateur magician. And you're going to see a real magician here at 1 o'clock. And he wanted to fool people. He wanted to make a clock that he called a mystery clock. And he couldn't tell how it worked. It would have no gears, no plugs, no wires, no nothing. But it would still, the hands would show the correct time. So he created the very first mystery clock. it's like a magician's trick. There is a secret to it that he figured out, and then other people started trying to do their own types of mystery clocks. And Robert Houdin was actually the inspiration for how many people have heard of Harry Houdini, the magician. He took his name was really Eric something, but he took his name from Robert Houdin, who made the mystery clock. All right, oops, I'm going the wrong way. Next up, what do mystery clocks look like? Well, there's one in an old pharmacy window. It's just on the glass with numbers and hands, and there's no gears, no nothing. Here's one that was popular in the 1960s. It has an electric cord that runs it, but the hands just hung there in the middle, and they would turn around at the correct time, but you couldn't figure out what was turning them, or how they worked, or how they kept correct time. All right, we're gonna go time traveling again. Everybody close your eyes if you would, please. We're gonna travel to 1908. The first Model T Ford car was sold this year. And in Rochester, New York, a little boy was growing up on a farm over in Holly. So I'll show you a couple of pictures from here. This was Albion Street in Holly, and my grandpa was this little boy here. And in 1908, his life changed because a local businessman loaned him a watch, this actual watch, and said, figure out how it works. So the 16-year-old Charley took the watch apart and figured out, he wrote down every single piece, where it went, what it did, and he figured out how it worked. And as a result of that, the businessman was so impressed that he gave the watch to my grandpa. And my grandpa became a watchmaker that day when he was just 16 years old. And he actually loved to put his name on stuff, so he wrote his name on the front of the watch dial that the businessman had given him. All right. In the 1920s, this is the East Rochester part of the story. My grandpa grew up. He built a house that's still there today on the corner of Main Street, East Rochester, and 31F. It's right near East Rochester High School. And there's my grandma and grandpa, and that's actually a picture of my dad when he was a little boy. All right. So they lived here. He was a very successful watchmaker in town, and people admired his work. Unfortunately, there was some drama and tragedy. It was the Depression, and it was really hard times for everybody in America. And my grandma and my grandpa ended up having terrible fights, and they got divorced. So my grandpa moved to Los Angeles, and it was here that he opened a new watch shop called Allison Watchmakers, and drove around in a cool little car delivering watches. And when he made this new shop in Los Angeles, nobody knew him there. He hadn't grown up there. He didn't have any family there. So he had to figure out a way to attract people to come to his store and bring their watches to get repaired. You know what he did? In addition to the clocks that he made that were very unique, his first one was this mystery clock. He said, I'm going to make a mystery clock that nobody can figure out how it works. And he tried to figure it out, and he couldn't think of a design that would work properly until one night he was sleeping, and in a dream, he figured out, I know how I can make a mystery clock work. And he designed this clock. It's a wooden clock with a pin in the middle that just hangs down from the 12, and the two hands, you can take them on or off the clock and spin them. But when you walk up to this clock, you just spin the hands, and they'll go around separately. You can spin this one or spin this one. You can spin them in any direction, and they always come back to the correct time. And this was his idea to get people to come to his store. And it was very, very successful. He started getting people writing newspaper articles about it. For people who know old Hollywood movie stars, people like Buddy Abbott of Abbott and Costello, Mary Astor from Maltese Falcon, Dana Andrews from The Best Years of Our Lives, Sterling Holloway, the voice of Winnie the Pooh. All these people came to check out my grandpa's clocks, and they signed his little guest book. I actually inherited that too, so I have proof that they were there. They were very, very impressed with his mystery clock. All right, so once he made that mystery clock and people started coming and he was being very successful in the Los Angeles area, he started making other clocks because he was a creative guy and he had an artistic vision for different clocks. So each clock that he made was unique. There's no two that are alike, and he ended up making a total of, in addition to the mystery clock, he made 12 littler clocks over the period of the 1940s and the 1950s, which became the Allison collection that my dad told me about when I was 15 years old. Unfortunately, my grandpa died in 1955, and his entire clock collection disappeared. My dad didn't know what happened, as I mentioned earlier. He thought it was supposed to go to a museum, but nobody knew what happened to it. All right, here's our last time travel trip. I want you to close your eyes one more time. We're going to go to the year 2017. And in this year, scientists are beginning to figure out how to make working interfaces between computers and the human brain. So way forward from the electricity stuff. But in Rochester, New York, it was time for a grown-up kid who had made a vow to start solving a mystery. So I'm going to ask you, if you were going to start to try to solve a mystery, where do you do it? Where do you begin to solve a mystery? Anybody have an idea? Where would you look first? The answer that I went down to try to solve my mystery was I started with the internet and did a whole bunch of searching, and not a lot of information came out. So even though we have all this vast World Wide Web and tons of knowledge, something that happened back in 1930 was not on that. So I didn't have a lot of success there. So I moved forward over the next 5 years, and I learned a really hard lesson. Detective work is really hard. It's not as easy as it is on a TV show when they solve the mystery in 1 hour. So I did decide that libraries were very helpful. So I went out to the Los Angeles Public Library to look through their stacks. Anybody know what stacks are? Judy Fuller.
Aren't the stacks like the shelves of books that you're looking at, and also it could be computerized collections of information?
You are correct that it is the shelves. Often the stacks are referred to when it's the underground storage. It's not just the regular books that you get, but it's actually all the old newspapers and all the old photographs and all that old kind of stuff. All right, so the library was somewhat helpful. I found old phone listings from my grandpa, and I found a divorce case about my grandpa. And then I found that museums are really helpful too. And there's actually a museum in Pennsylvania that is dedicated to watches and clocks. But guess what? They didn't have any information about my grandpa either. So while they were very helpful, they didn't help me solve my mystery. So I finally decided I needed to take some trips to visit the place where my grandpa actually had his watch up and where the mystery clocks. Kind of like going to the scene of the crime. Here's where the clocks were last seen in Los Angeles, so I'm going to go there. I did go there 3 times in total. And I stood in the corner where my grandpa's shop was. It was already wiped out, no longer there. I went to all the local museums. Nobody ever heard of my grandpa, so the mystery was still a mystery. I did get some help from a community of older technology, and that is Amish watchmakers. How many people here have seen the buggies driving around on the back roads here in different places? Yes. So the Amish community, they choose to keep older technology, so they don't have electricity in their houses. They do have indoor plumbing. They don't talk on telephones in their house, but they're allowed to go down and talk on a telephone as long as it's connected to a wall somewhere, like at the library. So I went there because one of the things they have done is they love watches. They love that older technology. And they actually continue to do the same work that my grandpa did. They clean and fix watches, and they restore them, and they are teaching the next generation of Amish people this skill, so they keep passing it down. Because as people get older and older, there's less and less watchmakers, because everybody looks at their cell phone now. Nobody really looks at watches much anymore. But there's still a need for it. So I found a very helpful guy down near Cornell, New York, who was able to sort through some of my questions to help me, to give me ideas of where to keep looking for my grandpa's missing collection. And I also used newer technology. I took the clock that I had and I made a little video about it and I put it up on my YouTube channel. That happened in 2019. The other biggest lesson I learned about detective work is you have to have a lot of patience because things take time. And what happened for me, does anybody know the one, I just said it, I said that you have to have patience. There's one other thing you must have if you're going to solve a mystery. Does anybody have a guess on what it is? It's the most important thing I learned about solving a mystery. Any guesses? Yes?
Persistence?
Did you read in advance? That is the correct answer. You don't give up. And if you don't give up, good things will eventually happen. You may not get the absolute solution that you're looking for, but as long as you keep at it, you have a better chance of solving your mystery. So it took me 5 years, and I was ready to give up. I had been to Los Angeles 3 times. I've been everywhere and everywhere until something very special happened in 2022. A lady in Montana saw my YouTube video, and she sent me a message on the YouTube video in the comments and said, I think I know the rest of the clocks that you're talking about. Give me a call. And it turned out, when I went to Montana, that I have a whole step family that I did not know about. This lady, her name is Judy Allison, and she is the stepdaughter of the stepson of my grandfather's 4th marriage. And when her stepdad died, she was closing up his house, and he said, throw everything away. I mean, he was 9 years old. She was moving him back to her house. And so she went in to clear out his house, and in a closet, she found a box. And in the box were all these little wrapped items in cloth, and she didn't know what it was. And when she opened them up, they were very unique artistic clocks. She said, I'm not going to throw these away. These belong to the Allisons. She knew the legacy of Charley Allison. She'd never met him either, but she had heard from her stepdad about his work. So she went online and started looking for me. She wanted to find the East Coast Allisons who had originally known Charley and knew about these clocks. So she was such a wonderful person. I met her, I drove out to Montana, and she said, you know what? These clocks belong to you and your family. And she gave me the entire collection of my grandpa's clocks, with one exception. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And this story was so popular out in the Los Angeles area that the Los Angeles Times wrote a story about this mystery, and they put it on the front cover of the Los Angeles Times in August of 2024. So that was pretty exciting. Yes, oh sorry. All right. One little problem. I was so happy at getting the clocks back that I wrote a story about how I solved this mystery, and that's the book that I have out on my table. But there was one thing that didn't happen. The mystery clock was still missing. My cousin, Judy Allison, thinks that when they cleaned out the grandpa's house, her father's house, that they threw away this clock. She doesn't know for sure because lots of people were helping, and it looked very simple. It's just a piece of wood. It didn't have any gears or works or anything, and she thinks it got thrown away. So that was a sad part of the story. However, there are 2 good things that came out of it. Number 1, my grandpa made a second, smaller mystery clock. I don't know if you saw the picture of it. It had a little American Eagle on top. And the Amish guy was able to take that apart with me, and we figured out my grandpa's dream design and how he made a mystery clock. And as a result of that, I had paired up with a local guy named Craig Smith, who creates music boxes, and he is helping me with the help of the Amish guy and the help of Craig. He's helping me recreate my grandfather's missing mystery clock. And he just sent me this the day before Christmas. He has started on the wooden frame for it. So I want to thank you, everybody, for listening to my story about this real-life mystery that I was able to solve, and hearing about my grandpa. I love to share his message. I think it's just kind of such a neat story. I'm so happy that he always wanted his clocks to be recognized and put in a museum. I did have a display in the National Watch and Clock Museum for the summer of 2023. 6 of the clocks are right now down in New York City at the Horological Society of New York on display. They've been there for almost a year. So I feel like my grandpa would be very pleased that you are sitting here in Rochester, his hometown, and are hearing the story about his unique creations. I do invite you, if you thought it was a cool story, you can look me up on Facebook. I've got a page dedicated to him and his clocks. Feel free to join it or write something about it, or just let people know that he existed and he made some pretty cool clocks. If you want to stop by the table up there, I have postcards for anybody who wants to have a free postcard. And thank you very much for